Hey, welcome to Beat Everyone. I'm Ben Flanagan with AL.com, and we are back from SEC Media Days at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta. We saw Kalen DeBoer and a few Alabama football players in the house, heard from them, learned a little bit about what the Crimson Tide has planned in 2025. And it's in the name. We saw a lot of sports media folks at SEC Media Days. They cover football, college football, and we even spoke to several of them for many of last week's episodes. And one for today, we talked to the film guy, Brooks Austin, and he had some really cool insights for what he's expecting from Alabama this season. So make sure you stick around for that. First, joining me to take a look back at all of it from last week, Beat Everyone producer Matt Scalisi. Matt, this was my first ever SEC Media Days. As I recall, you've been to a few of these. How did this one measure
Honestly,
up?
this is probably approaching my 20th. I might have missed one or two in there over the years, but I mean, it's, I've been going to these since I was working for our student paper, Ben, at Alabama, and it's old. I mean, it's evolved a lot over the years, but I think you did get a good taste of what it's like generally. Again, like the vibes have changed a lot from back when this thing used to be essentially in a hotel ballroom in Hoover every year. It had a very unique feel because that's all there was. And now, of course, it's in basically a tourist attraction in Atlanta. And it's a lot more glamorous looking, and I think it's much more of a TV event. But generally, you got the vibe of it because most of what you and I spent our time doing was being on the sort of infamous Radio Row. They call it Digital Drive now. But I mean, that's kind of how this thing works for a lot of folks in the media. It's really kind of a convention where you're sort of scrambling to talk to a bunch of other people in the business because you're finally all in the same room together, which doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. Again, it was my first. I've watched these from afar through people like you who have been there and told me about your experience. But it was neat being in the College Football Hall of Fame. They've got this really cool sort of like lobby atrium area that has this wall of college football helmets
Was this
and
your
all of
first
this
time to
art.
the College Football Hall of Fame as well?
Yes, first
Yeah, and
time.
it's a really cool building. It's a lot more fun than the name suggests, I would say, if you've never been there. For like, if you've got kids who like college football especially, it's a absolute must do in Atlanta. It's a good way to spend an afternoon, and it's like very, I would say it feels much more like a modern museum where there's like interactive stuff and cool displays, but also like there is the legitimate Hall of Fame on the top floor where Nick Saban's name will soon be added.
Yeah, and it's like colorful because it just has
Yeah.
all of these college programs, jerseys and helmets and other memorabilia and a lot of these exhibits were kind of like shut down while we were
Right.
there because SEC Media Days kind of took it over, but you could see it all around us. And we were kind of in like the military wing of the College Football Hall
Yeah.
of Fame, and so we saw this Commander in Chief trophy, which is massive, by the way. But if you just kind of circled Digital Drive, you could kind of get a sense of like how everything was set up, and it was really cool to be there. A really fun environment, and yeah, we saw ESPN was set up and SEC Nation or SEC This Morning, and all the different iterations of what the SEC Network does. We saw our good pal Paul Feinbaum doing his radio show and doing nonstop hits throughout the day on TV, whether it was for SEC Network or ESPN on Sports Center and things like that, and all these different media personalities that we interact with, that we've had on this show, that we spoke to on this podcast. And everybody should go back and listen to all those amazing episodes where you did several interviews. Nick Kelly, our good friend on the Alabama beat, did several interviews, and we caught up with a lot of those people. But man, I mean, on and off the mic, we talked about Alabama football with a lot of these folks. And I'm just curious, like, what was your big takeaway from people when Alabama was the topic? Because there are 16 teams to cover in this league, but our focus is obviously the Crimson Tide and any progress that Kalen DeBoer seems to be making. But a lot of the media folks that we talked to about this seem to have an idea not only about Alabama, but where they fit into the greater SEC.
Yeah, I mean, I think even though Alabama, was not one of the SEC teams that made it into the playoffs last year, I think that they remain a huge focal point in this league. I mean, that shouldn't surprise anybody that listens to this, I guess, but I don't think anything's changed on that front. I don't think Alabama has fallen from the ranks of the most talked about programs in this league. And in fact, I would say they're probably as focused on as anybody, with the possible exception of Texas. I think Georgia, everybody kind of knows what they are now. They're a known commodity. There's high expectations for them every year, but I think there's a lot of intrigue with Alabama right now because until Kalen DeBoer shows what he's capable of with this program, I think people are going to remain very curious, and they know the stakes are high there. And most of the people that we talk to, Ben, on and off the mic, um, seem to feel optimistic, and they seem to feel that Alabama's ceiling is higher this year than it was last year for a variety of different reasons, but mostly because they feel, I mean, obviously the addition of Ryan Grubb, which we've talked about a lot on here, I think has a lot of people excited and optimistic about this team, but also just the personnel. I think most people seem to feel like, just in terms of actual talent on the field, that Alabama stacks up as well as any program in the conference. And I mean, those are the things you want to rely on most, right? Is having a great coaching staff and having a great roster, and anything else is really hard to hang your hat on. Anything else is more of sort of an X factor, and those can be fun to have on on your side. But I think Alabama's place in this league for a long time now has been, they win because they're better, because they have more talent and more resources, and they seem to be in good shape in those departments right now.
Yeah, look, we asked a lot of these analysts who were fantastic and had a lot of insight and gave us good time, and we asked them directly, do you think Alabama is a national contender? A team that can contend to win a national title this year in 2025? And all of them, to my recollection, said yes. I don't recall any or many people suggesting that Alabama is on the outside looking in when it comes to being one of those teams who can win it all this year. I mean, they'll point to different position groups and say things like, we're a little worried about edge rushing and defensive line and depth here and depth there. But for the most part, most people think that Alabama has a really complete team. And the question mark is obviously quarterback. And everybody was kind of asking DeBoer and the players who came with him, sort of presuming that Ty Simpson is the starter, including us. I think that, we feel fairly safe in assuming that Ty Simpson is going to be the guy who takes the first, and if not most, if not all of the snaps in 2025. Something could happen and things could shock us, and maybe Austin Mack or Keelan Russell makes a big play for it during fall camp. But that's the huge question mark. But a lot of people seem to have confidence that Ty Simpson is not only the guy, but is talented enough to lead Alabama as a first year starter to playing for championships, not necessarily winning them. We'll have to see what happens. But I think Alabama fans should be pretty confident in what they heard, not necessarily from Kalen DeBoer or any of the players, because, in some ways you have to take that with a grain of salt. They're all here to do their job. They're here to win a championship, and that's what you're going to hear from them. But for the people who are there to analyze and scrutinize, they're convinced that Alabama is in this thing.
I think so, and I think additionally, Ben, I think that seems to be almost. I don't want to say in spite of the quarterback situation, but I do think a lot of the people that we asked about the quarterback situation, I think everybody felt like no matter who wins the job, the offense is in better shape overall than it was a year ago because of the personnel changes and the additions to the coaching staff. But I look, I don't think there's anybody out there right now who believes that Ty Simpson is going to be a sort of, I hate to compare, but let's just pick a couple of Alabama guys, a sort of Tua or Bryce Young level game changer where the whole offense is built around his spectacular talent. But I also think most people we talk to don't think that they need a guy at that spot who is that type of player, because this is a team with a lot of returning experience. And really, most importantly, I think we heard so many people highlight that wide receiver core and say that is maybe the best wide receiver room in college football. That is a big expectation to put on that group, but people seem very high on that unit in particular. And obviously, if you've got a group like that, it makes the quarterback's job a lot easier.
Very few meaningful snaps, quote unquote, for Ty Simpson in his Alabama career so far. Really, only in the South Florida game when he came in for a spell and had to try to win the game for Alabama. Otherwise, it's just been garbage time. And you hear these analysts talk all about that on this pod and later on this one when Brooks Austin gets into it. But Ty Simpson, I think everybody understands and is convinced he has ability, but he's a big mystery. He's a big question mark. We're not going to know until we see him in game action, and that's coming sooner than later. But do we expect him to be a Bryce Young or Tua Tagovailoa? To your point earlier, no. I think what people just want is AJ McCarron. They want Greg McElroy. They want Jake Coker. These guys who are first-year starters and were still able to come in and lead a team like this to a national championship because they were able to minimize mistakes, make the throws that they need to, and play winning football. That's what they want from Ty Simpson. That's what you want from any starting quarterback. So we'll see what happens. Matt, it wasn't long ago that Florida State's quarterback, who are going to be first on Alabama's schedule in 2025, Tim Castellanos, dropped a bit of bulletin board material on Alabama. He said, quote, "I dreamed of moments like this. I dreamed of playing against Alabama. They don't have Nick Saban to save them. I don't see them stopping me." End quote. I just don't see them stopping me. End quote. So Alabama sent 3 players to media days: Caden Proctor, Tim Keenan, and Deontay Lawson. Matt, Tim Keenan and Deontay Lawson were asked about Castellanos' comment, and separately, they both said the same thing. Quote, "All disrespect will be addressed accordingly." End quote. Matt, what do you think of their response to this?
I mean, I think they played it the correct way. I think that they look on top of first of all, that's the smart play anyway, is to not give them anything back and just say, "Hey, we heard it. We heard you. Noted." But also, I mean, look, not to I on a fundamental level, I appreciate Thomas Castellano doing this. And I think that college football would be better if more people did stuff like this. Would I want my quarterback saying this coming off of what was it? Was it 2-10 or 3-9 that FSU went last year? It was not good. And on top of it,
I believe 2-10 didn't go well.
Yeah. You're a transfer quarterback who could not win the starting job at Boston College, a respectable institution. Not saying anything. Look, things work out for different people at different places. I would say you better be very confident that you can back this up. And look, I will say this about it. I don't know if you've seen the other clip about this. They're different college players in different parts of the country sort of end up working out together in the off season sometimes, even if they're on different teams from each other. And there was a workout that somebody was taking video of Castellanos, and also there was Alabama wide receiver Isaiah Horton, who's one of the members of that room we talked about a few minutes ago that people say is going to be spectacular. I think Castellanos did not know there was an Alabama receiver in the workout with him, but it's a great piece of video. Go find it. And the guys are like, "Hey man, you know, that guy plays for Alabama, right?" And he's sort of like giggles about it. Like, I think he sort of knows that, and he almost apologizes. He says like, "Look, man, I'm trying to get my guys hyped up for this game. I'm trying to get
no, don't backtrack. Don't backtrack. What would people say? Keep the same energy,
But I think that's good. I know you're a big wrestling guy, Ben. Like, to me, it's all in fun, and I think that I think it's good for the game, and I do think it actually can motivate your team a little bit if they hear one of their leaders talking big like that. The problem is, of course, that the Alabama players can hear you. And I don't know why you'd want to give them any further incentive to smash you into the dirt of your home stadium, but you have done so now.
I agree. We could use more Sunday night at the Civic Center. I'm going to smash your head in. Everybody tune in. We need a little bit more of that in college football. I agree. It's entertainment. Let's not forget that. All right. Good analogy there, Matt. After another week at SEC Media Days, I just want to look back on this. Another moment that stuck out to me. It came during Kalen DeBoer's press conference during the portion when he was actually answering questions, limited number of questions, I should say. In what was probably the most pointed question of the day, he was asked, I believe, by a reporter from Saturday Down South, if I'm not mistaken, if the 2024 season lived up to the Alabama standard. So DeBoer said, quote, "Yeah, I mean, if you internally ask us, no, we fell short of making it to the playoffs. It's as simple as that, right? Giving yourself a chance to go compete for a national championship," end quote. He said, Matt, that there are things about the season he was proud of related to making progress towards building the program, building his program, but they fell short of their ultimate goal. And he said that they're going to take advantage of the failures and get better because of them. We've heard Nick Saban say things like that. Don't waste a failure, right? Matt, how should Alabama fans feel about Kalen DeBoer's answer here?
We've discussed on the show before that I don't think that Kalen DeBoer is the most dynamic public speaker. And I don't think that he changed that reputation at Media Days this week. Now, look, I do think when he is in a different setting, I think when he's in a more like one-on-one situation, he's a little bit more comfortable. And I think, I mean, a great evidence of that is the interview that you and Nick Kelly did with him, where it's a totally different environment than a guy standing up on stage behind a podium and answering questions. And I just don't know that that's a good setting for him. And he doesn't thrive in it currently. That answer to me was an effort to be very diplomatic and not throw anybody under the bus in particular, which I appreciate. And it doesn't seem like, from everything we've heard, that, I mean, we've heard a lot of the players say, Coach told us this was going to be the hardest summer we've ever had, and it has been, and it lived up to that. But that's different, I think, than the sort of, maybe let's say like a sort of old school mentality of, I'm going to run guys out of this program who I don't think are tough enough for us. I don't think he's going for that. I think he just feels like everybody can take more accountability and push themselves a little harder. And that seems to be what they're doing. And I think that answer is pointing at that a little bit. I think that he knows that not everything was running the way it should be run last year, that not everybody was perhaps at the top of their game. And that's not even a question of character or effort or anything like that. It's just the kind of thing that happens when you're transitioning to a new coaching staff and a new offense and a new defense. And, with the benefit of an extra year of experience now, I think you have more reason to expect that everybody involved in the program is going to be more on top of doing the stuff they're supposed to be doing.
I thought he did a pretty good job in his intro anyway. Like, I mean, again, he was only asked like a handful of questions by a room full of media holding their hands up, and including some of our guys. And I would have loved to have heard more interaction between DeBoer and the reporters. And I'm sure that they had a lot of amazing questions that they wanted to ask. But I thought his intro was a great summary of like what they've done, what they're trying to do. And he was obviously prepared coming into it. Is that the most dynamic thing people want to hear and like listen to when a coach is up there just kind of like going on and on about this and that? No, they're all waiting for the Q&A portion of
and
the
look,
public appearance.
He's not a guy that's going to crack jokes like Lane Kiffin or like the Missouri coach whose name is escaping
Eli
me.
Drinkwitz.
Yeah, Eli Drinkwitz, who look, I enjoyed hearing him. It was funny.
Guy.
But also, I don't need that from the coach. I need him to know what he's doing. And I think even though Kalen DeBoer, I would say, is relatively uncontroversial at this point, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And I think it's a moment of stability for this program at a time where actually there's kind of a lot of hubbub, let's say. Maybe like a lot of attention is being paid to other programs and not always for the best reason. I don't like Ben, this is a little bit of a tangent, but like to me, the biggest sort of phenomenon of this media days was the day that Texas was there and the absolute flock of media hanging from the rafters to get photos of Arch Manning. I don't necessarily think that's a great thing to have happening in your program. To have, I mean, and he's a very talented player, but I don't think it's bad for Alabama that they don't have a sort of standout phenomenon on their team that's sucking up all of this sort of constant media attention. Alabama's just sort of quietly going about preparing for the season. They feel good about their roster. These are guys that have largely played together. This is not a team that's like made up of a ton of transfers from all different schools that don't really know each other yet. I kind of don't view the quiet and the lack of controversy as a bad thing for Alabama here.
I agree with you, and I think that with Kalen DeBoer specifically, it's by design. That's the way he wants it, and that's the way he's going to execute it. On the Arch Manning note, here's the other side, or the other argument that I would present there is you want your starting quarterback and somebody who is the face of your program to show that they're comfortable in settings like that. They're comfortable with a lot of attention, with a lot of scrutiny that I mentioned, in a room full of media and people who want to ask you a million different questions. You want them to show that it's nothing to them. And this, compared to what they're going to be facing against SEC competition come this fall, there is no comparison whatsoever. And so that's why I wonder, like in Alabama's case, why not bring Ty Simpson to media days? Why not go ahead and name him your starter? I'm sure that there are probably recruiting ramifications and why they've waited as
And
long as
fall
they
camp.
have.
I think they want to push
Right.
everybody in fall camp too. I would say, Ben, the more so the question for me is why not have Ryan Williams there over
Right. Bring a star.
quarterback.
You bring a star and show off your star and somebody
no
who
offense-
represents the program really well.
No
And
offense to the three absolutely enormous and very, very intelligent men that we spoke to.
Okay. You're getting to my last Alabama takeaway.
Yeah.
Here. And that's so another takeaway, Matt, that I had is that Caden Proctor and Tim Keenan are large human beings. and we sat down with both of them. They're both linemen at Alabama. And Tim Keenan in particular, Matt, had quite the handshake.
Oh my God, Ben. I could hear my bones moving around in my hand when Tim Keenan gave me that handshake.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the guy did it on purpose either. I think the guy just
I think he was trying to be careful, and he just.
I think he unknowingly crushes grown men's bones without thinking about it. Is what he does.
Yeah,
Tim Keenan.
But also both super respectful guys, and
they were great.
And took the interview incredibly seriously, and came in like ready to talk and actually give us substantial answers to our questions. Which, like, as somebody who's done thousands of interviews with athletes, that is the minority of them are guys who are really engaged and want to actually have a conversation that's worthwhile with you.
Yeah, I thought they were fantastic. They were fun and you're right. They were up for anything, answered all of our questions. And I'm just giving people a fair warning, like if and when like you're going to meet this young man, there's nothing that you can mentally or physically do to prepare for what he's going to do to your hand. So no worries there. Matt, last thing on SEC Media Days before we toss it to our interview. Auburn, right? Like we don't want to spend too much on them, but Hugh Freeze was there. Jackson Arnold was there. Their starting quarterback was in the house. Give me what like your read on Hugh Freeze, because obviously they're part of the Iron Bowl rivalry. Alabama is going to Auburn to play them. We know it's going to get nuts no matter what we think may go down. What did you hear from Hugh Freeze at Media Days?
I mean, it was very tense, Ben. To me, unlike, I mean, it's sort of the opposite of Kalen DeBoer's, where you come into that and everyone's like, okay, well, like, let's see what he has to say. And not really that much to ask because he covers it all. And there's not really a ton that we don't know that we even can know. Whereas I think as soon as Hugh Freeze walks in the room, everyone's like sort of gripping their seats a little bit, and they're like, "Eesh, how is this going to go? What are people going to ask him?" Because it could honestly be a number of different things. I mean, they're having, I don't want to get into the specifics of it. They're having off field issues right now that are headline making for all the wrong reasons. Hugh Freeze also, I mean, to a much lesser degree, I think is getting some negative press because his recruiting has not been going well so far, combined with his really quite impressive golf handicap that he's been posting publicly. And I think that tension is not unfamiliar for Auburn. I feel like they're always, our friend Kevin Skarbinski was sort of joking with us about it. It's like there is no, Auburn is just in a perpetual state of drama all the time. But you know, to me, having to get asked about your golf controversies, having to get asked about, are you going to suspend this key player on your team or not? It's not what you want to be talking about at a press conference. And I don't, even though Hugh's answers, I think, were on paper very optimistic, and he's talking about that he has high expectations for his team and he thinks they're capable of being a playoff team. uh I just don't feel that energy from him. I don't feel the uh, the strength of that opinion. I don't know that I believe that he thinks this team is going to be great, and I think you have to say it no matter what at SEC media days. But that's been the big thing for me with Hugh Freeze, and I obviously have all kinds of issues with that hire. But the biggest thing for me is ever since he's gotten to Auburn, I just haven't had the sense that he cares a whole lot. I haven't seen that push from him of, and I'll compare him to the last guy, well, the two guys ago now, Gus Malzahn, who I think, for whatever you want to say about him, that guy was heavily motivated. He had a chip on his shoulder. He really wanted to beat Alabama, really wanted to do something at that program. He was a guy with a lot of energy, I think, that he brought to that program. And I haven't been picked up on any of that from Hugh. I think he used to have it. I don't know where it's at.
It's on the links, Matt. It's out there on the golf course. That's where his
He's
brain
clearly
is
a
at all
competitor.
times.
Yeah. He's clearly knows how to compete.
He's the opposite of Scotty Scheffler, right? If people saw that viral clip of Scotty Scheffler saying that this doesn't give me satisfaction, golfing gives
Yes.
Hugh Freeze satisfaction.
Yeah.
Okay, let's be clear about that. So maybe college football is his parallel to Scotty Scheffler. It's like, yeah, we may win the SEC, may win the Iron Bowl, but it doesn't give me satisfaction. Golf is what gives me the real satisfaction. So we'll find out, at least with the Iron Bowl, about 4 months from now.
And look, honestly, Ben, the thing is, he could have a season that is not good enough to keep his job all the way to November, and I still will not be able to confidently tell you Alabama's going to win that Iron Bowl because of what building it's in this year.
That's what everybody wants to hear on the Alabama podcast, but we're nothing if not objective, are we, Matt? Okay, well, if you haven't yet, you've got to go back and watch our interviews, listen to our interviews with Caden Proctor and Tim Keenan, Greg McElroy, Damian Harris, Josh Pate, Cole Kublet, Chris Lowe, Jordan Rogers, many, many more interviews with people giving us everything about what we should expect from Alabama this season. It's all must watch if you want to get hyped for the 2025 season. And so on that note, Matt, let's go to our conversation with the film guy, Brooks Austin. So we're here with the film guy, Brooks Austin, director of recruiting for the SI Network, lead editor of Bulldogs on SI. Brooks, again, you're the film guy. Everybody knows you by that moniker. On either side of the ball, what pops on film for Alabama? Like, is there a thing that separates them on either side of the ball in terms of the SEC or the rest of the country?
Yeah, I think when I think about Alabama football this year, especially compared to last year, the style of offensive change that they're going to go through just because of the difference in talents that they have at the quarterback position. If you study Kalen DeBoer's history as an offensive play designer and play caller, the style of play that Jalen Milroe has, though explosive, though dynamic, though athletic, not really his ideal quarterback. If you go back and look at all of his recruiting like wins and past decisions and guys that, if you go back all the way back to Fresno State, Jake Haener puts up 4,200, 4,500 yards, right? You go to Washington, he brings back Michael Penix from Indiana, gets Will Rogers out of the portal, right? Signs Austin Mack. None of those football players really look or play like Jalen Milroe, right? So I felt like last year, stylistically as an offense, especially losing Ryan Grubb and during this change certainly hurt, but they had to change the style of offense, really revolve it around quarterback run, right, with Jalen Milroe's legs. This year, I think you're going to see much more of what a true Kalen DeBoer system looks like, not only bringing back Coach Grubb, but really having a facilitator at the quarterback position as opposed to a playmaker at the quarterback position. So I think that's the biggest thing that's going to pop to me is just how much they're going to revert back to what made him the offensive coordinator that he is. Guys, I went and studied it. I think the last 7 years, they've had over 4,000 yards passing at the quarterback position under DeBoer. They threw for 2,800 yards last year. Like, there's one blip on the radar. There's one that sticks out like a sore thumb, if you will, from an offensive performance standpoint. It's last year at Alabama for them. I think you're going to see a totally different offense.
Well, you've singled out the quarterback position, right?
Yeah.
And how that seems like an anomaly for DeBoer and Grubb for that matter. And we'll get to Grubb in a second. But let's focus on Ty Simpson.
Yeah.
He's the presumptive starter,
Yeah.
right? We've heard players even say it's a three-way race, but there have been indicators, even from the coaches, including Grubb, that suggest that if the game is tomorrow, Ty Simpson's the starter. So we can, I think, pretty safely assume it. We've seen limited reps from him in his career at Alabama. Yeah. But we've seen him make some plays here and there.
Yeah.
He even played some meaningful snaps against South Florida a couple of years ago. Do we even know the half of it with his ability and potential at this point? What do you expect?
I think it's, 50 career attempts spread out over a bunch of garbage time. Like, when I look through the game logs to attempt to study him, actually, I think the most attempts we have is like a 10-attempt game against maybe Mercer or something like that. So there's not a lot of room to actually study what he's actually done in college. But just knowing what I know about Ty, being I believe a coach's son, right, being a quarterback that's been around the game for a long time, I assume he speaks it at a very high level, right? I assume he speaks the game and sees the game at a relatively high level. But any first-year starter, I think a lot of people learned this about Garrett Nussmeier last year at LSU. Despite the fact that he's been there a long time, he might be a junior or a senior, he's still going to go through growing pains. I just wonder if they're going to be patient enough at Alabama, considering what they have behind him. They're going to be patient enough to go through those growing pains and allow him to take those lumps. I would imagine with him kind of being the leader, it seems like, I'm not an Alabama insider, but everything I hear about Ty Simpson is that he's kind of grabbed the reins there. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that increases your leash a little bit when you are that leader. I think we even saw that a little bit last year with Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, for sure. And, look, first-year starters at quarterback is something that I think Alabama fans are fairly comfortable with, at least during the Saban era.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reason to be comfortable during the Saban era, but you had guys like A.J. McCarron, Jake Coker, Greg McElroy, for instance.
Yeah.
They all won national championships as first-year starters, so it can be done,
Yeah.
right? So you mentioned Grubb. We keep hearing that he is going to be a huge difference. What kind of X factor do you think Grubb will be for Alabama? What kind of difference in the season, wins and losses wise, can he be?
So the most important thing with an offensive play caller, in my opinion, having studied football all these years, is that the offensive coordinator, the head coach, and the quarterback are seeing the same thing at the same time and seeing it the same way. You know what I mean? We're speaking the same language because we're in different parts of the field. One guy's in the huddle, the head coach is on the sideline dealing with God knows what game management-wise. Then we got the play caller all the way up there in the box deciding what we're actually going to do. As long as we see it the same way, we free everybody else up to play and do their jobs, right? If the offensive coordinator can be trusted, and I'm not saying that the offensive coordinator last year wasn't this way. Like Nick Sheridan, I'm not saying he didn't have full autonomy of the offense, but I guarantee you there were moments in those football games last year where DeBoer was listening in on the headset when he might have been, over there controlling something a head coach should have been doing. It's something I've always talked about with head coaches. Nick Saban never called his own plays. Kirby Smart doesn't call his own plays. Dabo Swinney doesn't call his own plays. Like, the greatest football coaches need to be CEOs, full-time CEOs, to manage the ups and downs and the differences in the game and the small decisions in the game. And if I'm over here staring at a Waffle House play card, that could be a recipe for disaster, right? So I think getting that continuity back and being comfortable with the guy up in the box, 100% certainty. I don't think there's any coincidence that both Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer, to a man, probably had their worst seasons as football coaches in the last half decade for the both of them, and they were separate from one another. There's very obviously a sense of comfort with these two. Stylistically, what is it going to look like? I think you're going to see a lot more motions, a lot more stacked releases from wide receivers. I'm getting super nerdy here with the football, but it's going to look a little bit different, not only because of the quarterback, but because of Grubb coming back.
Yeah, and you mentioned a head coach needing to be a CEO, and Nick Saban seemed to be like the epitome of that. I believe you were in the room when Kalen DeBoer just spoke the main room and gave his spiel and had his press conference. What did you hear from him today? I mean, did he convince you at all? It was obviously a short presser. It's a small sample size. But has he convinced you that Alabama is ready to take a step, if not the step that they need to take?
Yeah, so I've listened to DeBoer, obviously, 2 years in a row here at SEC Media Days. I listened to him pre- and post-game during the regular season to hear what he's thinking about the game. I don't think he's a very comfortable public speaker. I don't think that's what he wants to do. I normally find the offensive-minded football coaches to be far more analytical, far more introverted by nature. Those defensive guys are very boisterous. They're very energetic. That's just the nature of the position and the sport. I don't know why. Maybe it's because offensive guys are always trying to find that schematical advantage while defense is, hey, let's go hit somebody today. So I do think he was a little bit nervous speaking in front of the audience, but there are two types of coaches. The coaches that come out here with a purpose and they care about SEC Media Days. Then there are the coaches who kind of mail it in, talk for 2.5 minutes, and then say, hey, what do you got for me? DeBoer cares about this stuff. He shows up. He does it. I saw him before his media availability up here talking to Digital Drive, even before his allotted time. So the fact that he cares about genuinely everything, I think that's a sign of success in any individual. Do you show up and give a damn every time you show up?
100%. So, Brooks, as a film guy, you know that up front is where it really matters, right?
Yeah.
Like Brian Kelly earlier this week said that the big similarity that he sees between a Kalen DeBoer coached Alabama team and a Nick Saban coached team is physicality, that they both understand that you win up front. That's true for any football team,
well,
right?
they got rolled for 380 yards on the ground last year.
Very true. Well, based on what you saw last season and how the roster has evolved, how competitive do you think Alabama will be up front this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think they got blue chippers, and four come to mind immediately. LT Overton, obviously everybody knows about him. I thought the nation was robbed of what might have been a historical freshman season from Clay Rousseau. Get a high ankle sprain. I think it's against Wisconsin. We're banged up against Georgia. It kind of takes us a little while to get back to ourselves. But if you watch that Wisconsin tape, Kane Womack's like, hey, how many different ways can I take this first game true freshman and make him an impactful player? And he was. I thought he was the best defensive player on the field for Alabama in that Wisconsin tape when I watched it. So watching him come back and obviously LT Overton and seeing what kind of ceiling he could have in year 2 at Alabama, having transferred over from A&M. I think a lot of people forget about LT. That's a reclassed kid. So he might be a senior, but he's the age of most college juniors. He got to college a year early, reclassed into that famous 2022 Texas A&M class. So probably got to college a year early, and I think he's finally on time where he's supposed to be. So I expect him to be really impactful. But I think Parker Brailsford, everyone's rushing to Jason Kelsey comparisons nowadays because of how famous that guy is and how fun he was to watch towards the end of his career. But there are a few athletic centers that kind of revamp what we do offensively, like Parker Brailsford. I'm excited to see what he's going to do. I mean, he's been a game one, day one starter for DeBoer since coming out of high school, and he did it in the Big 12, the Pac-12. He must have been playing at 270 pounds. Like, he's a really light guy as a true freshman. He's put on a considerable amount of weight coming over to the SEC and maintained his athleticism. Obviously, everybody knows about Caden Proctor, but I find joy in studying Parker Brailsford because it's fun. It's rare you get to see an interior offensive lineman make you have fun watching tape. That's what he does.
High praise, to say the least. A couple more for you here, Brooks. What do you consider the biggest question mark for Alabama heading into the season? If you're Kalen DeBoer, one of the coaches, if you're a fan, what's keeping you up at night?
Yeah, consistency, right? Like, even we don't even have to go game to game. Last year, I thought they were a different football team half to half against Georgia. The first half, they were unstoppable. Like, they were the best team in college football. Second half, kind of played flat, right? Let Georgia get back into that until Ryan wins. Then next week, they lose to Vandy. It's like, whoa, right? Later on in the year, I just talked about it. They roll LSU in Baton Rouge. Rush for over 300 yards. Look unstoppable. 14 days later, they lose to Oklahoma. It's like, I want to see this, man. I want to see constant growth and constant build if I were an Alabama fan. Now, I think I know why that was. You got a first-year head coach replacing not only the greatest football coach of all time, but arguably the most connoted with discipline, right? The guy who's always on you in Nick Saban. Well, how am I supposed to come in and jump down everybody's throat, right? We just had the biggest disciplinarian of all time leave. So I think there was a little bit of, like, love you with open arms type of coaching last year from DeBoer because he felt like he couldn't do that. That's gone now. We've had a year. The guys who wanted to get out of here and play for Saban, they're gone. It's our football team now. It's mine. I'm going to coach you like I think you should be held to, and I think you're going to see that consistent growth from Alabama this year.
Last question, is Alabama a contender to win a title this year?
Yeah, honestly, I think there's like 9 or 10 college football teams that are in that discussion. When I look at the landscape of college football, there's a hole or a question or a concern with every national title contender, right? With Georgia and Alabama, it's not questions about their quarterback. It's more of like, what's it going to be, right? Texas, obviously Arch, but not just Arch, but replacing all of the NFL talent that they lost. Same situation with Ohio State. I think the most consistent football team and roster right now is probably Clemson. In terms of situation, you're obviously the keynote pick in the ACC. Nobody's really sniffing for close place second. Everybody's in a close conglomerate for number 2. The world of college football, and it's because of NIL, it's because of the transfer portal, talent disparities at a higher rate than ever before. I just think we're in a much more open sport. It's about whether or not you can consistently execute and build and peak towards the end of the year nowadays.
Brooks Austin, living up to the film guy moniker,
Absolutely.
man. People can follow you at Brooks Austin BA. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, no doubt.
Our thanks to Brooks Austin. Go check him out, the Film Guy Network on YouTube. Really entertaining channel. He's a great analyst. Go check him out. Thanks again to our friend Nick Kelly for handling day one in Atlanta for us, along with our video team, Laura Goldman and Wes Seiner providing backup. And thanks to Beat Everyone producer and more, Matt Scalisi, for handling business for us at College Football Hall of Fame on day 2 and day 3. Thanks, Matt. Always appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben.
Find Beat Everyone on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Please go rate the show. Write us a review. More importantly, subscribe, watch, listen to new episodes as we post them every Monday and Wednesday. Later this week, we're going to continue our countdown of the 15 best Alabama football games of the 21st century as Nick Saban hit the first of many big milestones as the Alabama coach. So you don't want to miss that. Until then, I'm Ben Flanagan with AL.com. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.